So yesterday we were discussing about the oral hypoglycemic drugs and the varieties of the drugs were being discussed, especially the sulfonylurea derivatives, the GPP4 inhibitors, GLP-1 inhibitors, and many more drugs. And of course the incretins are the one which stimulate insulin release and lower the blood pressure glucose and then inhibit the glucagon release, whereas this DPP4 inhibitors are the drugs which block the DPP4 enzyme which activates the enzyme incretins. So enzyme and it also activates that particular thing. And here also you can see that oral glucose, when it is given, then it is absorbed into the small intestine, then incretins are released which decrease the plasma blood glucose level, especially in the liver, whereas the pancreas releases the beta cells release insulin, the quantity increase, whereas the alpha cells are going to decrease the glucagon. So glucagon is promotes the glycogen breakdown to release the glucose, whereas the DPP4 inhibitors like gliptins, they are called as the dipeptidase 4 DPP4 and cause the inactive peptides. So usually this cycle is very a normal physiological function, and whereas the drugs are going to inhibit such cycles, especially in case of the diabetes is concerned. So the mechanism of action is like this, and the next agent is vildagliptin, and this is a second DPP4 inhibitor and available in Europe and India, which binds to the enzyme covalently, especially DPP4. The complex dissociates very slowly, resulting in the persistent DPP4 inhibition. So the free drug will be cleared from the circulation, and this explanation the longer duration of action, because the vildagliptin is having the mechanism of action to the extent of 12 to 24 hours, and despite short plasma T-half, especially that is called as the 2 to 4 hours, the major route of elimination is by the hepatic metabolism. Only 20 to 25% is excreted unchanged in the urine, and also the dose duration is needed, especially in moderately severe liver and kidney diseases, and no significant drug interactions have been reported. Then the vildagliptin is selective than sitagliptin for DPP4 and causes especially the some inhibition of DPP9, as well as the clinical significance of this is not so understood. So the vildagliptin is similar to that of the sitagliptin, already yesterday we have discussed, but the hepatotoxicity has been reported, whereas the vildagliptin may require the twice daily dosing, through single daily dose suffice in most of the cases when combined with another oral hypoglycemic agent. And the next agent is saxagliptin. It has been available in USA or the other countries, but it's recently marketed in India. Like vildagliptin, it binds covalently with the DPP4 and acts for 24 hours despite the plasma life is the 2 to 4 hours. So it is metabolized by the CYP3A and generates an active metabolite that has a T-half of 3 to 7 hours. So the drug interaction with CYP3A4 inhibitors are possible, and the dose is totally the 5 mg once daily, reduces half in the moderately severe renal failure. So this should not be used in liver diseases. So another drug, that's the recent drug alogliptin, marketed in Japan, and lindagliptin has been recently approved in USA. That means the newer and newer drugs are coming and released into the market. Of course, the earlier disadvantages will be removed in the newer drug, especially the adverse effects are removed, try to be removed, and also the toxic rate or the severity of the toxicity will be reduced as the new drugs are being developed. So another agents are the biguanides, or these are also called as the AMPK activators, biguanides, and two biguanide antidiabetics, especially the fenformin and metformin, were isolated in 1950s, and because higher risk of the lactic acidosis, fenformin was withdrawn and was banned in India in the year 2003, especially the fenformin, the earlier drug, whereas the metformin is very commonly used with the particular structure. You can see that it is having the 2-methyl group, NH group, and hydrogen group at the end. And the metformin, it differs markedly in structural activities or many other properties, causes little or no hypoglycemia in non-diabetic subjects, and even in diabetes episodes of hypoglycemia are rare, whereas the sulfonylureas and other drugs cause lot of hypoglycemia. So that's a very risky factor. So it is not going to stimulate the pancreatic beta cell, so it is going to improve the lipid profile as well as especially in case of type 2 diabetes. So the usually metformin is prescribed by most of the diabetologists for the treatment of type 2 diabetes mellitus. That's always a common prescription. And the mechanism of action, how it is going to act. Biguanides do not cause insulin release, but presence of insulin is essential for their action. Remember, number one, biguanides do not cause insulin release, but the presence of insulin is very much required for their action. Metformin is not effective in pancreatectomized animals in type 1 diabetes. So it is only effective in type 2 diabetes. So activation of AMP dependent protein kinase or AMPK to play a crucial role in mediating the actions of the metformin, and the key features are: number one, it suppresses the hepatic gluconeogenesis and glucose output from the liver, because liver is one of the important source for gluconeogenesis. So this is the major action, yes, suppression of hepatic gluconeogenesis and glucose output from the liver, and for lowering of blood glucose in the diabetes mellitus. So enhances the insulin mediated glucose uptake, and also the muscle and fat. So insulin resistance exhibited by type 2 diabetes is so overcome, and this translates into glycogen storage in the skeletal muscles. So the reduced lipogenesis in adipose tissues and enhanced fatty oxidation will happen. And the third mechanism of action is it interferes with mitochondrial respiratory chain, and also promotes the peripheral glucose utilization through anaerobic glycolysis. So this is also another mechanism how it is going to cause. The number one, it is going to reduce the glucose metabolism or gluconeogenesis, especially in the liver, and whereas it enhances the insulin mediated glucose uptake and disposal in the skeletal muscle and also the fat. Whereas the third mechanism is it is interfering with the mitochondrial respiratory chain and promotes peripheral glucose utilization through the anaerobic glycolysis. So these are the three important mechanisms of actions, especially this drug. And here you can see that the detailed mechanism of action of this particular drug. So the metformin or it's a classical biguanide, and it is going to bind with the receptor, and also in the mitochondria it is going to act and stops the further gluconeogenesis. That's one mechanism, whereas the others are the gluconeogenesis. This is a pathway how gluconeogenesis occurs, especially in the liver. So these are all the steps where the glucose ultimately it is going to be produced, whereas the steps, the different steps are going to be inhibited by the metformin. Of course, the conversion of the pyruvates to the glucose are totally stopped, and the AMPK enzyme is having the property of conversion of glycogen to glucose. So it is going to inhibit such lipogenesis and fatty oxidation. So that mechanism is enhanced. Whereas here you can see that the glucagon is a hormone which is going to convert the glucose into the other format, or the fat and adipose tissues, whereas the metformin is going to block the AMP and especially alpha, gamma, beta 1 units of this AMPK. Then there will be down signaling of the pKa. That's why the ATP is converted to AMP. That's why this step is blocked, and hence the glucose production will be hampered. And AMPK activation by metformin appears to be an indirect consequence of interference with cellular respiration and lowering of intracellular ATP and other energy sources. So the metformin also retards the intestinal absorption of the glucose and also exhausts amino acids and also the vitamin B12. So coming to the with very little pharmacokinetic property, clearance of metformin approximates the glomerular filtration rate, or it's also called as the GFR, and it accumulates in renal failure and increases the risk of the lactic acidosis, especially in the persons who are suffering from the diabetes mellitus. And the adverse effects of these agents with metformin are frequent, but generally they are not so serious. They are not of serious nature. So the abdominal pain, like anorexia, bloating, etc., are the non-specific toxicity signs, and the metformin does not cause the hypoglycemia except in overdoses, very high doses. So that's one of the important aspect for this thing. And the lactic acidosis, small increase in blood lactate occurs with metformin, but lactic acidosis is rare, especially it's less than 1 per 10,000 patients, because it is poorly concentrated in hepatic cells. So the alcohol ingestion can precipitate the lactic acidosis, means it can increases the lactic acidosis, whereas the vitamin B12 deficiency due to the interference with its absorption can occur with high dose of the metformin. So deficiency of the chronic administration of the vitamin B12 deficiency may occur due to the chronic administration of metformin. And in addition to the general restriction for the use of oral hypoglycemic, metformin is contraindicated in hypotensive patients, especially in case of those who are having the heart failure, severe respiratory, hepatic and renal diseases, as well as in the alcoholics, because increased risk of the lactic acidosis. So drugs like the furosemide, a high ceiling diuretic, may compete with metformin excretion and enhance its toxicity, especially So along with the furosemide, it should not be taken. So metformin is now established as first choice of the drug for all type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. So it's one of the most commonly prescribed drug, and the advantages of metformin is non-hypoglycemic and weight loss promoting, because the doctors need not worry about the hypoglycemia and need not caution the patient also. So the non-hypoglycemia state is one of the good state, and has potential to prevent microvascular as well as the macrovascular complications of diabetes, like the diabetic neuropathy, atherosclerosis, and many more complications. So no acceleration of beta cell exhaustion failure in case of the type 2 diabetes mellitus. So the anti-hyperglycemic effect, that's the HbA1c reduction by to the extent of 0.8 to 1% relevant to the other oral anti-hypoglycemic drug. And this metformin can be combined with any other oral injectable anti-diabetic, and if one drug is not adequate, many times the physicians prescribe 2 or more drugs. That's always the line of treatment for the diabetes mellitus. So one of the limiting feature of this drug is the GI intolerance, especially at higher doses, but it is not a so serious side effect. And the infertility, yes, this is one of the important side effect, especially the metformin has been found to improve ovulation and infertility in some fertile women with polycystic ovary, and this can be used in the cattle to improve the fertility also. So metformin has been found to improve ovulation and fertility in some infertile women with polycystic ovary. So in the veterinary practice, one can test this particular thing, and this benefit is observed irrespective of the glycemic status of the woman, and it may be due to the mitigation of insulin resistance and lowering of the circulating insulin levels. Yeah, the next agents are the thiazolidinediones, or they are called as PPAR gamma agonists. So here the important example is pioglitazone, and only one thiazolidinedione, that's the pioglitazone, is currently available, whereas the other drugs are banned in India, like rosiglitazone, because it has due to the unacceptable risk of the myocardial infarction, the congestive heart failure, stroke, and death. So this class of the oral anti-diabetic drugs are selective agonists for the nuclear peroxisome proliferative activated factor, or gamma, that means PPAR gamma, which is expressed mainly in fat cells, but also especially in case of the muscle and other cells. So it enhances the transcription of several insulin responsive genes, and the glitazones tend to reverse insulin resistance by enhancing the GLUT4 expression and also the translocation. Then this is the how the drugs are going to act, especially thiazolidinediones are going to act on the adipose tissues, and adipogenesis will be increased, whereas the fat acid uptake, increased lipogenesis, and glucose uptake will be taken, whereas the plasma free fatty acids, where they reset glucose fatty acid cycle, and ultimately the hyperglycemia may take place, and the thiazolidinediones are going to block this particular step, especially acting on the liver and also on the skeletal muscles. So this is also the another chart which explains the action of the TZDs and it's going to act on the PPAR gamma, then it's going to cause varieties of the reactions, especially it is going to act on the liver and stops the gluconeogenesis, and also on the especially on the skeletal muscles it's going to act, and it is going to stop or decrease the atherosclerosis. So the entry of glucose into the muscle fat is improved, so that the hepatic gluconeogenesis is suppressed, and activation of genes regulating fatty acid metabolism and lipogenesis in adipose tissues contributes to the insulin sensitizing action, and also the lipolysis and plasma fatty acid levels are reduced, and another action is adipocyte turnover and differentiation is accelerated by the glitazones, and thus the fatty tissue is a major site of action of the TZDs. The magnitude of the blood glucose reduction is somewhat less than sulfonylureas and also the biguanide metformin. So there is improved glycemic control, which results in the lowering of the circulating glycosylated hemoglobin and insulin levels in the type 2 type of the diabetes patients. So here you can see that particularly the drugs, the diet, the adipose tissues and the fatty acids are acted by PPAR alpha, and ultimately it is going to be acted by the PPAR gamma, and the lipoxygenases and cyclooxygenases are the inflammatory mediating enzymes. So they are going to induce the prostaglandins and also the leukotrienes in presence of the PPAR gamma, especially in the nucleus. So pioglitazone in addition lowers the serum triglyceride level, especially it raises the HDL level without much change in the LDL level, and probably it causes through the PPAR alpha. In the previous diagram what we can see here, this is PPAR alpha, and the pioglitazone is well tolerated. Adverse effects of plasma volume expansion, edema, weight gain, headache, myalgia and mild anemia is also present, and the monotherapy with this drug is not associated with hypoglycemic episodes are there, and few cases of the hepatic dysfunction have been reported. Yes, of course, the congestive heart failure may be precipitated or it is worsened, and the monitoring of liver function is always advised, and it is indicated in liver disease and also in case of the congestive heart failures, which are the common factors in diabetes mellitus. Whereas the glitazones increase the risk of fractures, especially in case of elderly women. That's one of the main side effects. Especially they are going to increase the risk of fractures, especially in the elderly women. And the drug pioglitazone is metabolized both by CYP2C8 and CYP3A4 enzymes, and the failure of oral contraception may occur during the pioglitazone therapy. And the ketoconazole, which is an antifungal drug, inhibits, and the rifamycin, anti-tuberculosis drug, induces the metabolism of pioglitazone. So concurrent administration of these two agents is not indicated. The pioglitazone is only indicated in type 2 diabetes mellitus, but it is not to be used in case of type 1. It reduces the blood glucose and the HbA1c or the glycosylated hemoglobin to the extent of 0.5 to 1.2% without increasing the circulating insulin. about 25% of the patients may not respond, probably due to the baseline insulin levels. So the pioglitazone is primarily used to supplement the sulfonylureas and also the bioguanide metformin, and in case of insulin resistance. However, it is not likely that it need to be effective when beta cell failure has set in already, then which may be cause of loss of efficacy of the sulfonylureas and metformin. So it can be used as a single drug therapy along with diet and exercise in very mild cases in the initial stage. So the several reports describe greater fluid retention, weight gain and precipitation of the congestive heart failure, because congestive heart failure is a very common phenomenon, especially in the diabetes mellitus, because of the fluid overload. Especially then the combined use of the glitazones and insulin is indicated. Then the experts advise avoiding such combinations, and pioglitazone should not be used during the pregnancy. This is also another important contraindications. The diabetes prevention program, which launched in 2005, has been shown that the glitazones have the potential to delay progression of the pre-diabetics over the type 2 diabetes mellitus. So they may help to conserve beta cells function in diabetes, that's the mellitus. Then the alpha glucosidase inhibitors are the one which decrease the absorption of the glucose from the intestine. So the classical example, it's acarabose. It's a complex oligosaccharide which reversibly inhibit alpha glucosidase, that's the enzyme, and the final enzymes for the digestion of the carbohydrates in the brush border of the small intestine. So alpha glucosidases are the enzymes required for the digestion of carbohydrates in the brush border of the smaller intestine mucosa. So it slows down and increases the digestion and absorption of the polysaccharides, especially the starch and sucrose. So in addition, the GLP-1 release is promoted, which may contribute to the effect. So the postprandial glycemia is reduced without the significant increase in the insulin level. The regular use lowers HbA1c modesty by the 0.4 to 8%, but change in body weight and lipid levels is minimal. To stop non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, it has shown that long-term acarabose treatment in the pre-diabetes reduces the occurrence of type 2 diabetes mellitus. So it also inhibits the cardiovascular complications, especially in case of the diabetics. So the acarabose is a mild anti-hyperglycemic agent and not a hypoglycemic, but may be used as an adjuvant to diet with or without the metformin or the sulfonylureas in the obese diabetic patients. So the dose of 50 to 100 milligram is taken at the beginning of the major meal, and only a small fraction of the dose is absorbed into the